Hello, this is the third game between Radjabov and Liren, in which Radjabov won. This is the third classical game of the Fide World Cup. We start off with e4. This is a martial attack. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle. Standard opening moves: bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, castle, c3. Instead of h3, which is the anti-martial, but c3, d5. We have the martial attack. Both players have this line, have the opening memorized. E takes, knight takes d5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes, and c6. Standard opening, d3. As I said before last video, sometimes they play d4. So we go c6. Look at the book here. Sometimes they play d4, then bishop d6, rook to e1, queen to h4, threatening queen takes h2, then g3, blocking it, queen to h3, develop the bishop, bishop hits the queen, bishop g4, queen d3, looking at f1 if bishop f3, then rook a e8, knight d2, rook e6. That's the line with the d4 variation. It's the d4 variation, but they played d3. So after that, bishop d6, rook e1, bishop f5, queen to f3, queen to h4, attacking h2, g3 blocking, and queen to h3. And here, white gives up the d3 pawn because he's slightly behind in development. So he gives up the d3 pawn, and all the pawns are now even. And he develops knight d2, queen to f5, bishop d4, rook f d8. Let me see if there's an alternate move to rook f. Rook f d8 is the best move, standard move. Rook f d8, then a4, attacking the queenside pawn, black's queenside pawn formation. h6 and h4, controlling g5. Rook a c8, queen takes, and bishop takes f5. Then we have knight e4. So let's see. Another alternative is bishop takes d5 here, which still leads to equality. Bishop d5, c takes, then b4, and rook to a8. With a more or less equal position, but we have knight e4. Black wants to keep that bishop. Bishop goes to f8. Knight c5. Attacking a6, the a6 pawn. And this is an interesting reply. Instead of knight b6 is what the computer recommends, but Liren plays knight b4. Because if pawn takes knight, you have rook takes bishop. Knight b4, if c takes, then rook takes. And then if knight a6, knight takes a6, rook to a8. Although, let's see, went down the line. Rook a8, a takes b5. Then c takes, and we're still pretty much even after c takes b5. Okay. Then maybe rook a3. So we have knight b4. And I was looking at a move here. Then rook e5. After rook e5, attacking the bishop on f5, then we have g6. Then we exchange pawns. A takes, c takes. And the computer says we're still even. Then knight to e6, that's an interesting move. It's a very creative move. Is there an alternative, another move here? Well, c takes. No, after knight e6, we have the bishop takes. The point is the square e6, where the bishop takes with check, attacking the rook after he picks up the rook. Then he picks up the knight on b4, and this is what happens: rook takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, check. King moves, then white picks up the rook. Rook takes, then white picks up the knight on b4, and there's a backward a6 pawn. Rook c4, hitting the bishop. Black has the kingside majority, but he has double B pawns. Well, white is up a pawn, actually, but the double B pawns would make that hard to realize. But he can do something with the king side here. So bishop to f6. The a6 pawn is still attacked. And he plays bishop g7. Now what if, let's see, bishop f6. So you can't, what if he picks up this pawn, which is pretty much a blunder here. Then rook takes. And white has a big advantage. So bishop takes, rook takes. So the point, he doesn't want him to, I mean, he has rook a7, check. So in this position, black is pretty much lost. So bishop f6, bishop g7, attacking the bishop. Bishop moves. Then rook c6, protecting a6. Rook a2. But let's see. He has bishop to b2. We'll see. After bishop e7, I was looking at another line. No, he can't. Let's see. My clicker is acting up here. Yeah, maybe should have taken on b2. I mean, it's worth a shot. Then rook takes a6. My clicker is not working right. So maybe black could have tried picking up that b2 pawn. Although after rook takes a6, white is very active. White is still up a pawn here, and he can do something on the king side. White can. So rook c6. So rook a2, protecting that b2 pawn. King g8, bishop c5 with an advantage. king f7. What white wants to do is walk his king on to g2, f3, and e4. King to g2, b3, moving the pawn from the attack of the bishop on g7 and making way for the rook on the second rank to come over. h5, king f3, king f5, rook to d2, cutting the king off. Bishop e5, rook d5, pinning the bishop. Now here was a mistake. King to f6 was a better move. Rook d5 and king to f6, although white could still make headway here. That was the whole difference in the game here. This king to e6. King to e6, the king is distant from the king side, these two pawns, the g and h pawn. And white controls f5 after king e4. The king can't come into the king side, king to f5. Bishop f6, f4. Bishop c3. Then f5 check. Now white has a decisive advantage here. King to f7. Radjabov played all of this correctly. Rook there. Here, king to e8 was a better try instead of king to g8. And then bishop d6. King to e8, he would have to move the rook. Now the rook can stay there. King to e8, rook check, and then king to d7. Then rook to h7. And those pawns would fall on the king side. He'd probably end up with two passers, white would. But king to g8 is a mistake. Bishop d6, because the king is cut off and the rook is cut off. Pawn takes, king takes. That h5 will fall eventually. Bishop g7 and then king g5, and Ding Liren resigned. So we have another Marshall, and they have another game to play tomorrow. The fourth classical game tomorrow. So Ding Liren will have white. So we'll see how that goes. And thanks for watching.